The buzzards found her before Wade Mercer did. They turned slow circles over the red trail, black wings cutting through the white heat. Wade saw them from the ridge and reined his horse to a stop. Nothing good waited under buzzards. The trail below him shimmered like it was boiling. Wagon tracks ran crooked through the dust, then broke apart near a patch of burned grass. A thin curl of smoke still lifted from something in the wash. Wade touched the rifle across his saddle. "Easy," he told his horse. The horse flicked an ear but did not move. Down below, something small lay in the road. At first Wade thought it was a bundle dropped from a wagon. Then the bundle moved. He rode down slow. The smell came first. Burned canvas, hot iron, blood drying in the dirt. The small thing in the trail was a child. She was face down beside a red stone, one hand closed around a little cloth horse. Its legs were crooked, stitched by poor light and patient hands. The fabric was faded blue with black thread for the mane. The girl's bare feet were torn open. Wade swung from the saddle before he knew he had decided to. His boots hit hard dust. The girl heard him and tried to crawl. She made it no farther than one elbow. "Don't," Wade said. His voice came out rough, too sharp. The girl flinched like the word had struck her. Wade stopped where he was. He had a face that made people step aside. A scar cut through his left eyebrow. His beard was rough from too many days alone. A gun hung low on his hip, and another waited in the saddle boot. He knew what he looked like. So he took the canteen from his saddle, knelt in the dirt, and set it between them. "Water," he said. "You take it." The girl stared at the canteen. Her lips were cracked. Dust clung to them. Her black hair hung loose from a torn braid. She could not have been more than 16, maybe younger, but hunger and fear had made her eyes old. She looked at Wade, then at his gun, then at the canteen. Wade eased back one full step. "I won't grab you." The girl did not answer. She moved one shaking hand toward the canteen, stopped, then dragged it closer. Her fingers were small and gray with trail dust. She tried to lift it, but her strength failed. Wade turned his head away and looked toward the burned wash, giving her what little pride he could. Behind him, he heard the canteen scrape. Then a small choking sound. He looked back fast. She had spilled water down her chin and was coughing on it. "Slow," Wade said. He reached out. The girl jerked away so hard she nearly fell onto her injured feet. Wade pulled his hand back. "All right." He took off his hat and laid it in the dirt beside him, as if that could make him less dangerous. Then he picked up the canteen by the strap, held it low, and tilted it so one thin thread of water touched her mouth. She watched his hand the whole time. Only when she was done did she whisper, "No wagon." Wade looked toward the broken tracks. "Not anymore." Her fingers tightened around the cloth horse. "They leave," she said. "Who?" Her mouth closed. A wind moved over the trail, hot as breath from an oven. Far off, something cracked inside the burned wash. Wade looked that way again. There were marks everywhere once he knew to see them. A wagon had stopped hard. One horse had fought the harness. Someone had dragged a trunk. There were ashes where bedding had burned. Then the wheels had turned south in a hurry. They had left the girl on foot, barefoot, in this heat. Wade's jaw moved once, but no words came. He had seen men shot for less. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl lowered her eyes. No answer. "I'm Wade Mercer." Still nothing. "I got a place north of here. Water, shade, bandages." The girl looked at the empty trail behind him. Wade understood. A lonely man offering a lonely cabin did not sound like mercy, not to someone already left in the dirt. He stood slow and backed toward his horse. "I can ride to town for the sheriff," he said, "but that's 20 miles. Son will take you before I get back." Her eyes lifted at the word sheriff. Not hope, fear. Wade saw it. "All right," he said quietly, "not sheriff yet." The girl hugged the cloth horse to her chest. A thin line of blood ran from her heel into the dust. Wade took a blanket from behind his saddle and walked back. He kept his steps slow, making each one plain before he made it. "I need to lift you," he said. "Feet won't carry you." "No," she whispered. He stopped. She tried to stand. It was the bravest, saddest thing Wade had seen in years. She put one torn foot under her, then the other. Her face went white. She did not cry out. She only swayed, held the cloth horse close, and took half a step. Then her knees broke. Wade caught her before she hit the ground. She fought him with what little strength she had, striking once at his chest with a fist no heavier than a bird. "Don't sell," she gasped. Wade went still. The words hung between them hotter than the trail. "Don't sell." He wrapped the blanket around her without pinning her arms. "Not selling anybody," he said. She did not believe him. He could feel it in the stiff line of her body. But she had no strength left to fight. Wade carried her to the horse. She weighed almost nothing. That made him angrier than if she had cursed him. He lifted her into the saddle in front of him, then mounted behind her, leaving space where he could. One arm held the reins. The other stayed loose around her, only close enough to catch her if she slipped. The girl kept her cloth horse pressed against her ribs. "What do I call you?" he asked after a while. She did not answer until the trail began to climb into the pines. "Rose," she whispered. Wade looked over her head toward the mountain line. "Rose," he repeated once so she would know he had heard. The heat fell behind them by slow degrees. The red land gave way to gray rock and dark pine. The air turned cooler. Shadows reached long fingers across the trail. Rose did not sleep. Wade felt her fight it. Every time the saddle creaked, her shoulders tightened. Every time his coat brushed her arm, she pulled inward. So he said nothing. Words were cheap on the frontier. A man could promise kindness and still carry a rope in his saddlebag. Better to let the horse climb. Better to let the water do what words could not. By late afternoon, they reached the cabin. It sat below a sawtooth ridge half hidden by pines. A small barn leaned beside it. A water trough glimmered near the fence. The porch boards were gray with weather. One corner of the roof had been patched with newer wood, but the rest looked as tired as the man who owned it. Rose stared at the place. "No people?" she asked. "No." That seemed to trouble her and comfort her at the same time. Wade dismounted first, then reached up. Rose pulled away. He did not argue. He brought over a crate from the porch, set it under her good side, and let her climb down by herself. She made it to the ground. Then she almost fell. Wade caught her elbow with 2 fingers, not his whole hand. "Inside," he said. The cabin door opened with a low groan. Rose stopped on the threshold. The room was clean but cold in a way that had nothing to do with weather. One chair sat at the table, one tin cup, one plate, a stove with ash gone pale inside it, a rifle rack near the wall, a narrow bed in the corner with a folded quilt that looked unused. On a shelf by the hearth sat a small wooden horse, carved smooth from pine. Rose saw it. Wade saw her see it. He crossed the room and turned the wooden horse face down. Rose's hand closed around her cloth one. "You live alone," she said. "Yes." "Why?" Wade set the canteen on the table. "Because I do." That ended it. He pulled a basin from a shelf and filled it from a bucket near the door. Then he took bandages, salve, and a clean rag from a box under the table. Rose watched everything. When he moved toward her feet, she tucked them under her torn dress. Wade sat back on his heels. "Rose, they're full of dirt. Dirt turns bad." She stared at him. "I cleaned them, you hold the knife." Wade took the knife from his belt, turned it handle first, and laid it on the floor between them. Rose looked at him as if this was a trick. "It's sharp," he said. "Mind your fingers." A long silence passed. Then she picked up the knife. Her hand shook, but she held it steady enough. Wade lowered his eyes to her feet. He had dug bullets out of men by lantern light. He had stitched his own shoulder with horsehair once. But washing that child's torn feet made something old and buried shift under his ribs. He worked carefully. The first touch of water made Rose suck in a breath through her teeth. Wade paused. "Keep breathing." "I am." "No, you're holding it like a squirrel in a trap." Frowned at him. It was the first expression on her face that was not fear. Wade dipped the rag again and cleaned around a cut in her heel. Blood clouded the basin pink. Small stones came free. A thorn had broken deep near her toe, and Wade had to use tweezers. Rose gripped the cloth horse with one hand and the knife with the other. Not once did she cry. When he finished, her feet were wrapped in white strips that looked too clean for the rest of her. Wade set a pair of socks beside her. "They'll be big." Rose touched the bandage. "Why you help?" Wade stood and poured the dirty water outside. When he came back, his face had closed again. Found you. That all? That's enough. Rose looked at the knife in her lap. She turned it once, then held it out handle first. Wade took it and put it back on his belt. He heated beans and coffee, though he did not give her coffee. He set food in front of her and moved to the stove, keeping distance between them. Rose ate like someone afraid the plate might be taken. Fast at first, then slower when she realized Wade was not watching her mouth. Outside, evening settled blue against the windows. A coyote cried down in the ravine. Rose froze with the spoon halfway lifted. Only coyote, Wade said. She nodded, but her eyes went to the door. Wade followed her gaze. Someone coming after you. The spoon lowered. Rose's face emptied. No. It was too quick. Wade leaned back against the counter. Rose. She stared into the beans. No, she said again, softer. He let it go, for now. That night he laid the quilt on the bed and put a blanket near the stove for himself. Rose stood beside the bed without touching it. You sleep there, Wade said. You. Floor. She looked at the rifle on the wall. Wade took it down, checked it, and set it beside his blanket. Rose's body went tight. Not for you, he said. She did not ask who it was for. When the lamp went out, darkness filled the cabin in one long breath. Wade lay awake with his hand near the rifle and his eyes on the window. He was used to silence. He had lived inside it for years, but this silence was different. This one had another person breathing in it. Near midnight, he heard the bed rope creak, then a soft step, then another. Wade opened his eyes without moving. Rose was crossing the room, not toward the door, toward the shelf. She stood in the dark near the hearth, holding her cloth horse against her chest. Moonlight showed the side of her face. She reached for the little wooden horse Wade had turned away. Her fingers touched it. Wade sat up. Rose spun, frightened. Leave it, he said, too harsh. She pulled her hand back as if burned. Wade rubbed a hand over his face. The wooden horse had belonged to Eli. His boy had dragged it everywhere for a summer, until one wheel broke and Sarah laughed and said a horse did not need wheels if it had enough heart. Wade had not heard that laugh in 7 years, but sometimes the cabin still threw it back at him. Rose whispered, "I'm sorry." Wade did not answer. She returned to the bed, smaller than before. The room stayed dark. After a long while, Wade stood. He crossed to the shelf and picked up the wooden horse. His thumb moved over the broken wheel. Then he set it upright. Rose watched from the bed but said nothing. Morning came cold. Mist hung low among the pines. Wade fried cornmeal cakes and set 2 on Rose's plate. He went outside after that, not because there was work that could not wait, but because the cabin had felt too tight after the night. He found her wagon tracks again in his mind, the burned bedding, the fear at the word sheriff, don't sell. By noon, Rose was sitting near the doorway with her bandaged feet on a stool. Wade had left one of his old shirts and a needle on the table. She had mended the tear in her sleeve with small, neat stitches. The cloth horse sat in her lap. Who made that? Wade asked. Rose's needle stopped. For a moment he thought she would close up again. My father. Wade nodded once. He had good hands. Rose looked down at the crooked little horse. He make toys from scraps. Say even poor cloth can run fast. The faintest smile touched her mouth and disappeared. He gone? Wade asked. Rose pulled the needle through. Rail camp fever. Wade said nothing. Outside, a jay screamed from the trees. Rose bent over her sewing, but her voice changed. After May took me. May. My father's wife, not my mother. Wade waited. Rose's fingers tightened around the cloth. She say I eat too much. Say no man marry girl with no dowry. Say I bring bad luck. Her mouth pressed flat. Then she buy red ribbon, new shoes for herself. She say we go west. Better work. Wade felt the room sharpen. What work? Rose did not answer. Her eyes went to the door, then beyond it, toward the trail below the mountain. Wade crouched to put another log in the stove, giving his hands something to do. Was there a man? Rose swallowed. The needle slipped and pricked her thumb. One bead of blood rose bright on her skin. She stared at it. He had silver watch, she said. White gloves, he not look at my face, only teeth, hair, hands. Wade stood very slowly. What was his name? Rose shook her head. He talk with May, I hear only place. What place? Her lips barely moved. Red Lantern Camp. Wade's eyes hardened. Red Lantern Camp sat below Ash Hollow, where miners drank away gold dust and men vanished under bad debts. Wade had passed through once and never wanted the smell of it on his clothes again. Rose was watching him now. You know. I know enough. Her thumb bled onto the cloth horse. She wiped it fast, upset by the stain. Wade took a clean rag from the table and held it out. She did not take it. May said he paid, Rose whispered. She said if I run, he send men. She said law not here Chinese girl. The cabin seemed to lose all sound. Wade's face did not change much, only his eyes did. What did he look like? He asked. Rose stared at the floor. Tall, black coat, voice like church bell. Wade knew then, not from the coat, not from the silver watch, from the way a man could make cruelty sound like business. Sela's Crow, Wade said. Rose flinched at the name. That was answer enough. For a moment, Wade was no longer in the cabin. He was in Ash Hollow 3 years back, watching a man in a black coat smile while 2 miners fought over a debt neither of them remembered taking. Sela's Crow owned saloons, freight lines, rooms above gambling halls, and enough frightened men to make his wishes look like law. Wade looked toward the window. Down the slope beyond the pines, the trail curved out of sight. Rose's voice came small behind him. He come. Wade did not turn around at once. On the table, the rifle lay between them. Last night, Rose had looked at it like a threat. Now Wade reached for it, broke it open, and checked the load. When he spoke, his voice was low and flat. Not through that door. Rose held the cloth horse against her chest. Outside, far below the ridge, a horse gave a distant whinny. Wade went still. Wade crossed the cabin in 3 steps and opened the door no wider than his shoulder. Cold pine air pushed in. Rose stayed in the chair, both hands around the cloth horse, her bandaged feet drawn back under the hem of Wade's old shirt. She did not ask what he saw. She had learned already that fear grew larger when fed too many words. Wade stood still and listened. The mountain had its own sounds, creek water under stone, pine limbs rubbing, a loose shutter tapping once then waiting. Far below, the faint complaint of a horse came again, not close, not yet. Wade shut the door and dropped the bar into place. Rose watched the movement. You lock me in? She asked. Wade turned. No, I lock others out. She looked at the bar, then at him. That answer did not make her trust him, but it made her think. Wade took his coat from a peg and shrugged into it. He checked the revolver at his hip, then the rifle by the table. Rose sat straighter. You go. To look. No. The word came quick, before she could hide it. Wade paused with his hand on the latch. Rose's face tightened, angry at herself for speaking. He looked at her feet, then at the trail dust still caught in the folds of her dress, then at the cloth horse gripped so hard the little body bent in the middle. I won't be long, he said. That was all he gave her. He stepped outside, the door closed. Rose heard his boots cross the porch. Then the slow creak of leather as he mounted. Then hoofbeats fading into trees. The cabin swallowed the rest. For a while Rose did not move. She listened to every corner. The stove ticked as fire settled. A rope in the bed frame gave a soft sigh. Somewhere in the wall a mouse scratched, then went quiet. The rifle rack was empty where Wade had taken the long gun down, and the empty space troubled her almost more than the rifle had. She lowered her eyes to the cloth horse. The stain from her thumb had dried near its neck. Her father would have clicked his tongue at that, then smiled and said a running horse should look like it had crossed hard country. She could hear his voice better than she could remember his face some days, and that scared her more than hunger ever had. She touched the crooked black mane. Baba, she whispered. The word sounded too small in Wade Mercer's cabin. Outside, wind moved over the porch. Rose forced herself to stand. Pain burned up both legs, but she did not sit again. She took one step, then another, using the table for balance. Wade had left the basin near the door clean now. His tin cup sat beside it. One plate, one fork, one chair, a house with no extra place for anyone. Rose looked toward the shelf. The carved wooden horse stood upright now. Beside it, tucked half behind an old coffee tin, was a flat leather case. She knew she should not touch it. She touched it anyway. Inside was a tintype. A woman sat in a chair with a small boy on her lap. The woman's hair was pinned back neat. Her eyes were clear and steady. The boy leaned forward like he was trying not to laugh. Behind them stood Wade, younger, clean-shaven. One hand rested on the chair, not quite touching the woman's shoulder. His face in the picture was still hard but not empty. Rose stared at it until her throat hurt. Then she heard hoofbeats. She closed the case fast and shoved it back behind the tin. The hoofbeats came up the slope steady and alone. Rose limped to the bed and sat, cloth horse in her lap, face turned away from the shelf. The door opened. Wade entered with cold on his coat and dust on his boots. He saw the room once quick. The moved coffee tin, Rose's stiff back, the leather case not quite where he had left it. His jaw worked. Rose lowered her head. "I did not break." Wade set the rifle by the door. "No." The silence after that had edges. He took off his hat and hung it on the peg. Then he crossed to the shelf, took the leather case and held it in his hand. For a moment Rose thought he would hide it again. Instead he placed it on the table. He did not open it. "Sarah," he said. Rose looked up. "My wife." His thumb pressed once against the worn leather. Boy was Eli. The name stayed in the room like people who had just stepped through the door. Rose waited. Wade did not offer more. But after a long breath he pulled out the chair and sat across from her. It was the first time he had sat with her instead of apart from her. "Fever took Sarah," he said. "Winter after, a beam gave way in the barn. Eli was under it before I crossed the yard." Rose's eyes moved to the little wooden horse. Wade saw it. He had that in his hand. Rose looked down at her cloth horse. "My father made mine before fever took him." Wade nodded, not soft, not cold. "Then we both got horses that outran their makers." The line was dry, but it did something strange. Rose's mouth trembled. She held it still. Wade looked away first. Outside, a crow called from the ridge. Rose said, "You turn it down because hurts." "Yes." "You turn it up because I saw." Wade leaned back. "Maybe." That was all, but it changed the cabin. Not much. Not enough to make it warm, but enough to make the air less sharp. By sundown, Wade had made a crutch from a forked branch and wrapped the top with cloth. He showed Rose how to set it under her arm. "Don't lean on the sore side." "I know walk." "Not like this." "I know pain." Wade looked at her, then gave one short nod. "Fair." She tried 3 steps. The first was poor. The second was worse. On the third she caught herself before he could reach for her. "I do," she said. "I see." He let his hand fall. That night rain came thin and cold, whispering over the roof and dripping from the porch eaves. Wade set a bucket under one leak near the hearth. Rose watched him move through the room, closing gaps, banking fire, checking the door. He placed a small sack beside the bed. Rose opened it after he stepped away. Inside were boots. Old, soft, too large, stuffed with clean rags in the toes. She looked at him. Wade was sharpening his knife by the stove. "They were Sarah's," he said, not looking up. "For now." Rose touched the cracked leather. "I cannot take." "You can wear." "Those hers." "They're boots." Rose knew that was not true. Wade knew it too. She set them by the bed, side by side, careful as if they might wake. In the morning he rode to Ash Hollow. Rose stood at the door with the crutch under her arm. "You said not sheriff," she said. "I said not yet." Her eyes darkened. Wade stepped down from the porch, then stopped. "I need to know where Crow is looking." "You ask, people know." "People already know too much in Ash Hollow." Rose gripped the doorframe. "What if he pay them?" "He pays some, scares the rest." "You alone?" Wade adjusted the rifle in the saddle boot. "Been alone a while." Rose did not like that answer. He could see it. So he added, rougher than he meant, "Bar stays down after I leave. If I knock, I say your name first. If anyone else comes, you don't breathe loud. Rose nodded once. He mounted. As he turned the horse, her voice followed him. Wade. He looked back. She had not said his name before. Rose lifted the cloth horse a little as if it could be luck enough for both of them. Come back with your face, she said. For a second, Wade almost smiled. I'm partial to it. Then he rode down through the pines. Ash Hollow sat in a bowl of dust and bad decisions. By noon, the rain had missed it completely. The street lay dry under wagon wheels. A dog slept in the shade of the blacksmith shop. Men watched from under hat brims and pretended not to. Wade tied his horse outside Bram's Mercantile. Inside, the store smelled of flour, kerosene, tobacco, and fear trying to pass for common sense. Bram looked up from stacking tins. Then he saw Wade's face. Mercer. Bram. Haven't seen you in town since calving season. Need salt, coffee, bandages. Bram began gathering the order. His hands were too quick. Wade leaned on the counter. Crow been through. A tin slipped in Bram's hand. Why ask me that? Because you're bad at lying. Bram's eyes moved toward the front window. Two men stood across the street near the Red Lantern office. Neither looked at the store, which meant both were watching it. Bram lowered his voice. Crow came in yesterday with that bookkeeper of his. Had a woman with him. Chinese woman, mean little thing. Said a girl ran off. Wade's eyes went flat. What woman? Called herself May. Said the girl was promised to Crow's concern. Contract labor, she said. Contract. Bram swallowed. That's the word. What did Crow say? Not much, he never does. Offered $20 for word of her, $50 if brought in clean. Wade's hand rested on the counter. Bram looked at it like it might draw iron by itself. There's talk, Mercer. Talk is cheap. Not his kind. He's telling folks the girl stole from him. Says whoever hides her will answer for theft. Wade picked up the sack of supplies. Then he can ride up and explain it. Bram's face went pale. Don't invite that man to your door. Didn't. Wade laid coins on the counter and turned. Bram called after him low. Sheriff Harlan is out by Miller Creek till tomorrow. Crow knows it. That ain't accident. Wade stopped. Outside, the two men across the street had separated. One moved toward the stable, the other toward the alley. Wade looked back at Bram. Much obliged. That ain't enough men for you to fight alone. No. Wade stepped into the sunlight. The street seemed to quiet around him. The Red Lantern office stood at the far end, painted too bright for a town that color. Its sign showed a red lamp with gold trim. Beneath the awning, Silas Crow stood in a black coat despite the heat. He held a silver watch in one gloved hand. He did not look surprised to see Wade. That was the trouble with men like Crow. They made every meeting feel arranged. Mr. Mercer, Crow called. His voice carried smooth across the street. Wade walked toward his horse instead of answering. Crow came down the steps. I hear you found something that wandered from my road. Wade untied his reins. Found a girl dying in the dirt. Crow gave a small, regretful tilt of his head. Runaways often injure themselves. Panic makes poor judgment. Wade looked at him then. She was left barefoot. Crow tucked the watch into his vest. You and I are practical men. The woman who had charge of her accepted money. Papers were witnessed. Transportation was arranged. The girl became my responsibility. Responsibility. My property, if you prefer plain language. The street held its breath. Wade's right hand stayed loose near his thigh. You came up my mountain, Wade said. You won't prefer what happens next. Crow's smile did not move far. I respect a man's grief, truly. It can make him attach feeling to stray things. Wade's face did not change. Crow took one step closer. But sentiment does not undo a sale. The word hit Wade hard enough that for a moment he saw Rose in the dust again, fist wrapped around a cloth horse, whispering through cracked lips. Don't sell. Wade mounted. Crow looked up at him. You are placing yourself against money, law, and good order. No, Wade said, just you. The smile left Crow's eyes. You have until dark tomorrow. For what? To deliver what belongs to me. Wade leaned slightly in the saddle. Ride careful, Crow. Mountain trails get narrow. He turned his horse and left Ash Hollow at a walk. No one spoke until he passed the last building. Then hoofbeats sounded behind him. 2 riders. Wade did not look back. He let them follow him out of town, past the dry creek, into the first rise of scrub and stone. When the trail narrowed between 2 rock walls, he nudged his horse faster. The riders followed. Wade waited until the bend. Then he slipped from the saddle, slapped the horse forward, and moved behind a boulder with rifle in hand. The first rider came around too fast. Wade shot the hat off his head. The man screamed, thinking himself dead, and dropped from the saddle into dust. The second drew. Wade's next shot struck the rock beside his knee, throwing chips hard enough to make him curse and lose his grip. Tell Crow, Wade called. I count better than I warn. The 2 men scrambled back the way they had come. Wade caught his horse, mounted, and rode hard for the mountain. He reached the cabin near dusk. Rose opened the door only after he said her name. Her eyes moved over him fast. You have your face, she said, for now. Then she saw the way he barred the door behind him. What happened? Wade put the supplies on the table. Crow knows you're alive. Rose's hand went to the cloth horse. He come. Yes. She closed her eyes once. Wade expected tears. He was ready for them in the clumsy way a man gets ready for weather he cannot stop, but Rose opened her eyes dry. What I do? Wade looked at her. You heal. No. The word was not loud, but it stood firm. He pulled a chair from the table and sat. Rose. No, hide only. She pointed at the window, then the door. He comes, you shoot. I sit, no. Wade leaned back, studying her. Her English was still careful, still spare, but something in her had shifted while he was gone. Fear had not left. It had made room for anger. What can you do? He asked. Rose looked around the cabin. She pointed to the water bucket. Fill all. Then to the lamp. No light by window. Then to the bed. Blanket on wall, stop glass. Wade stared at her. The corner of his mouth moved. Maybe a little. She pointed to the stove. Hot water. For what? If blood. That took the almost smile from him. Rose met his eyes. I know blood. Wade stood. All right. They worked until night took the ridge. Wade nailed spare boards behind the shutters. Rose tore old cloth into strips and rolled them tight. He moved the table onto its side near the front wall. She dragged the water bucket behind it, jaw clenched from the pain in her feet. Sit, Wade ordered. She sat for 1 minute. Then she stood and kept working. He did not order again. Rain returned after midnight, harder this time. It drummed on the roof and turned the yard black. Wade sat near the front window with the rifle across his knees. Rose sat by the hearth with the cloth horse hidden under her hand. The leather case lay on the table now, still closed. Rose looked at it, then at Wade. Sarah afraid of guns? She asked softly. Wade did not answer right away. No. Eli. Of thunder, not guns. Rose listened to rain. You miss noise. Wade looked over. What? She touched the table with 1 finger. 1 plate, 1 cup. Then she tapped the extra cup Wade had taken down for her that morning. You miss noise, she said again, but you keep house quiet. Wade's throat moved. He turned back to the window. That's so. Yes. Rain filled the room. After a while, Wade said, Quiet doesn't ask for anything. Rose looked at the cloth horse. Quiet also gives nothing. It was not said cruelly. That made it worse. Wade did not speak again for a long time. Near dawn, when the fire had sunk low, Rose fell asleep in the chair. Her head tilted against the wall, 1 hand still over the cloth horse. Wade rose and took the quilt from the bed. He laid it over her shoulders without waking her. His hand hovered near her hair. Then he pulled it back. At first light, he went to the barn and brought in more ammunition, a coil of rope, and a rusted bear trap he had not used in years. Rose watched from the doorway. wearing Sarah's boots with cloth packed in the toes. They made her steps clumsy, but she stood. Wade set the bear trap near the back window. Rose stared at it. For men. For horses first, if I can help it. She nodded. That morning he taught her the cabin, not like a man teaching a child, like a man teaching someone he needed alive. This board squeals, he said, tapping the floor near the stove. Avoid it if you're moving quiet. Rose stepped over it. This latch sticks. Lift before you pull. She tried it twice. Good. This wall is thickest. If shooting starts, you stay here unless I say otherwise. Rose touched the log wall. What if you fall? I won't. What if? Wade looked at her. She did not look away. He took the small revolver from the shelf above the door. Rose went still. Wade opened the cylinder and emptied the rounds into his palm. Then he showed her each motion slowly, how it opened, how it closed, where not to put her fingers, how heavy it would feel. I don't want you using this, he said. Then why show? Because wanting doesn't count for much when bad men come. Rose took the unloaded revolver. Her hands were careful, not eager. My father hate guns, she said. Smart man. You hate. Wade looked toward the window. I hate needing them. That was a truth she could understand. By afternoon, a rider came up the trail. Not Crow. A boy from Bram's store, no more than 14, hat too large, face white with nerves. He stopped beyond the yard and raised both hands. Mr. Mercer. Wade opened the door with the rifle low but ready. Speak. Bram sent me. Sheriff still ain't back. Crow's men are drinking at the Lantern, 6 of them, maybe 7. He bought rope from the hardware. Rose stood behind the wall unseen. Wade's hand tightened. The boy swallowed. Bram says he can't help open. He's got a wife. But he says the old mining road behind your ridge washed bad in spring. If you need running, don't take it. Wade nodded. Tell Bram he's paid his debt. The boy turned his horse fast. Then he looked back. Sir. What? The boy's eyes flicked toward the cabin. Folks in town are saying that girl stole, but Mrs. Alvarez said she saw May wearing new red shoes yesterday. Said no woman buys shoes like that after losing property unless she's celebrating. Rose's face changed in the shadow. Wade said, go home. The boy rode off. Rose came forward slowly. Red shoes, she said. Wade shut the door. Her voice was flat. She sold me for shoes. Wade had no answer that would not insult the wound. Rose looked at Sarah's boots on her own feet. Old leather, cracked, plain, given without bargain. She sat down on the bed. For a long time she did not move. Wade left her the silence but not the loneliness. He stayed at the table, cleaning the rifle piece by piece. The smell of gun oil mixed with rain and wood smoke. Finally Rose opened her palm. The cloth horse lay there. My father say horse knows way home, she said, but I not know if I have one. Wade slid the rifle barrel back into place. Home ain't always behind you. She looked at him. He kept his eyes on the rifle. Sometimes it's what doesn't throw you out. Rose turned that over in her mind. Outside, thunder rolled behind the ridge. The next day passed too quiet. That was how Wade knew Crow was near. No rider showed on the trail. No smoke rose from the lower road. Even the jays kept to the deep trees. By late afternoon, Wade moved through the cabin checking every latch again. Rose boiled water and set bandages near the hearth. She placed the extra cartridges where Wade could reach them from the table, then moved them lower when she realized he might fall. Wade saw it. Sensible, he said. Rose looked almost proud before hiding it. The sun dropped. The yard turned silver. Then the horses came, not loud at first, just a tremor through the boards. Rose looked at Wade. He lifted one finger to his lips. Hoofbeats stopped beyond the trees. One horse snorted. A man laughed under his breath and was quickly hushed. Wade moved to the front wall and looked through the slit beside the shutter. Rose stayed where he had taught her, behind the thickest logs, crutch close, cloth horse tucked into the pocket of Sarah's old coat. A voice rose from the dark. Smooth. Patient. Mr. Mercer. Wade's face hardened. Sela's crow stood somewhere beyond the porch light, hidden among the pines. "I was hoping we might conclude this without damage," Crow called. "A cabin is a poor thing to lose over a misunderstanding." Wade did not answer. Crow sighed. "Rose-Lynn, I know you can hear me." Rose's fingers closed over the cloth horse in her pocket. "You have been badly advised," Crow said. "Come out, and I will consider your running a childish error." Wade shifted the rifle barrel through the shutter gap. Crow's voice cooled. "Keep her, Mercer, and every board around you becomes kindling." Rose looked toward the stove, toward the water, toward the rifle in Wade's hands. Then she stepped out from behind the wall. Wade turned his head, warning in his eyes. Rose did not go to the door. She went to the table, picked up the lamp, and blew it out. Darkness folded over them. For one breath, the cabin vanished. Then a shot cracked from the trees. The front shutter split and wood burst across the room. Rose dropped before the splinters reached her face. The lamp chimney shattered on the table. Glass skipped across the floor like ice. Wade fired once through the broken shutter, and the rifle flash lit the cabin in a white blink. Then darkness swallowed everything again. Outside, a horse screamed. A man cursed. Wade moved before the answering shots came. He caught Rose by the back of Sarah's old coat and pulled her behind the turned table. "Stay low." "I am low." "Lower." The next volley tore through the front wall. Wood chips flew. The tin cup jumped from the table and hit the floor. The bucket near Rose's knee trembled with each shot. Smoke drifted in through the shutter crack, bitter with powder. Crow's voice came from the trees, calm as a man giving orders over dinner. "Do not kill the girl." Another rifle cracked. A bullet struck the stove pipe. Ash puffed into the room. Wade crawled toward the side window, rifle held close. Rose reached for the cartridges and slid them after him, one small handful at a time. He looked back once. Her face was pale, but her hands worked steady. "Good," he said. It was only one word. It landed harder than praise. Wade shoved the rifle barrel through a gap in the side shutter and waited. Outside, boots crushed wet pine needles. A shadow moved near the woodpile. He fired. The shadow fell with a cry and dragged itself away. Rose flinched, but she did not cover her ears. Crow called out, "You are reducing your choices, Mercer." Wade pulled back and reloaded. "Still got one I like." Rose moved to the hearth and took the iron poker. Wade saw her. "No." She froze. "I not go outside." "Still no." The back wall thudded. Then again Rose turned. "They try there." Wade heard it too, a knife working at the back shutter latch. He started to rise, but gunfire pinned him against the floor. Shots hammered the front of the cabin, cracking boards near his shoulder. Rose looked from Wade to the back window. Then she crawled. Rose. She kept moving, not fast, not foolish. Low across the floor, over the cold ash mark by the stove, around the squealing board Wade had shown her. The latch lifted from outside. A hand pushed through the gap. Rose brought the poker down. The man howled and jerked back. His knife clattered inside onto the floor. Wade fired toward the rear wall, and the man outside stumbled away into the dark. Rose grabbed the knife and slid it to Wade. He stared at her for half a breath. Then he nodded. The front door shook under a heavy blow. Once, twice, the bar held. Crow's voice came nearer now, no longer hidden deep in the trees. "This is foolish. She is not kin to you." Wade moved to the front wall. Rose pressed herself behind the table, breathing hard. Crow went on, smooth and cold. "You buried your family, Mercer. I know that much. Do you mean to join them over a purchased girl?" Something changed in Wade's face. Not rage, worse, stillness. Rose saw his hand tighten on the rifle. She had seen men become cruel when hurt. May had done it with her tongue. Camp men did it with hands. Crow did it with paper and money. Wade did not. He grew quiet around pain, like a door being barred from the inside. Rose reached out and touched his sleeve. Just 2 fingers. Wade did not look at her, but the rifle lowered a little. Crow stepped onto the porch. His boots were slow on the boards. "Send her out," he said, "and I leave you breathing." Wade answered through the cracked wall, "You first." A pause, then Crow said, "Burn it." The words were soft. That made them worse. A bottle burst through the side window in a rush of fire. It hit the floor near the bed and broke open. Flames spread in a bright, hungry sheet across the quilt. Rose smelled kerosene. For one moment she was back on the trail, smoke in her throat, May's wagon rolling away, the sun burning white above her. She could not move. Wade did. He snatched the water bucket and threw it hard. Steam burst up. The flames shrank but did not die. He grabbed the quilt with both hands, smothered the burning edge, then kicked it away from the wall. A shot cracked from the porch. Wade jerked back. Rose heard the sound before she understood it. Not wood this time. Flesh. Wade dropped to one knee. Wade. I'm all right. Blood ran dark from his upper arm into his sleeve. Rose crawled to him. He tried to wave her back, but she caught his wrist and pulled him behind the table with a strength that surprised them both. You lie, she said. Now's not the time to scold. You bleed now, I scold now. Another shot split the room. Rose ducked over his arm, grabbed the bandage roll and pressed it to the wound. Wade sucked air through his teeth. Harder, he said. She pressed harder. His face went gray. Outside, Crow's men were moving again. One at the back, two near the porch. Another by the barn where the horses stamped and pulled against their reins. Rose looked toward the stove, the hot water, the fallen lamp, the spilled oil, then toward the back window. The bear trap lay under it, hidden in shadow. She leaned close to Wade. Can you shoot porch? Yes. Shoot when I make noise. No. Rose took the small, unloaded revolver from the shelf. Wade caught her sleeve. It's empty. I know. She pulled free and crawled toward the rear wall. Wade's voice cut low behind her. Rose. She looked back. His face was tight with pain and fury, but under both was something she had not seen from any man since her father died. Fear for her. Not of her, for her. Rose held his eyes. I not hide only. Then she moved. At the back window she lifted the latch just enough to rattle it. The man outside heard. His boots shifted close. Rose pushed the empty revolver through the gap and pulled the trigger. Click. The man laughed. Then he shoved the shutter open and climbed in. His boot came down in the bear trap. The iron teeth snapped. His laugh turned into a scream. Wade fired through the front shutter at the same moment. A man on the porch fell back against the rail and crashed through it into the mud. Rose rolled away as the trapped man swung at her. His hand caught her coat, tearing the pocket. The cloth horse fell out. It landed near the burning quilt. Rose saw it. So did the man. He reached first, maybe thinking to hurt her with it. Rose drove the crutch into his knee. He dropped with another scream. Wade was there then, half standing, blood down his sleeve, rifle turned in his hands. He struck the man across the jaw with the stock. The man went still. Rose snatched the cloth horse from the floor. One of its stitched legs was singed black. She held it to her chest. The cabin had filled with smoke. Wade coughed and pushed her behind him. Outside, Crow's patience finally cracked. Enough. His boots hit the porch again. Wade lifted the rifle. Nothing happened. Empty. Rose saw Crow's shadow fill the broken doorway. He had a pistol in one gloved hand. Rain shone on his black coat. His face was smooth, but his eyes were bright with anger now. The bar across the door had split from the blows. Crow kicked once and the wood gave. He stepped into the cabin as if entering a room he had already bought. Wade reached for his revolver. Crow fired. The bullet struck the rifle from Wade's hand and sent it spinning across the floor. Practical men know when an account is closed, Crow said. Smoke curled between them. Rose stood near the hearth, cloth horse in one hand, Wade's knife in the other. Crow looked at her then. Really looked. Not at her teeth or hair or hands. At the person who had cost him. You have been a very expensive inconvenience, he said. Rose's fingers tightened around the knife. Wade shifted in front of her. Crow aimed at him. You should have stayed dead with the rest of your house. The words hit the cabin like another shot. Wade moved, not away, toward him. Crow fired. Wade twisted and the bullet burned past his side. He crashed into Crow hard enough to drive them both into the broken table. The pistol went off again into the roof. Rose ducked. The men struck the floor. Crow was not big like Wade, but he was quick and mean. His gloved fingers dug into Wade's wounded arm. Wade's breath broke and Crow rolled on top, reaching for the pistol. Rose saw it near the door. She saw Wade's blood on the boards. She saw the cloth horse in her own hand, burned but still held together. For once, fear did not tell her to run. It told her where to strike. Rose threw the cloth horse into Crow's face. It was only cloth, only thread and scrap, but Crow flinched. Wade drove his fist into Crow's jaw. The pistol slid across the floor toward the stove. Rose kicked it under the iron belly where no hand could reach. Crow staggered up, one hand to his mouth. Blood darkened his glove. His polished calm was gone. "You little." Wade rose behind him. He wrapped one arm around Crow's throat and drove him backward through the broken doorway. They crashed onto the porch. Rain poured over them. Rose grabbed the rifle from the floor and limped after them, though the gun was empty and too heavy in her arms. Crow slammed his elbow into Wade's wound. Wade stumbled. Crow lunged for the steps, not to escape, toward the second pistol in his saddle holster. Rose saw the movement, so did Wade. Wade threw himself forward and caught Crow by the coat. Both men went over the porch edge into the mud below. A horse reared. The rusted rail Wade had meant to replace split under Crow's shoulder. He struck the ground hard, rolled, and reached again for the saddle. Rose lifted the empty rifle. "Stop." Her voice was not loud. Crow turned his head. Rain ran down his face. For the first time he seemed to understand she was not a bundle, not a debt, not a line in a book. She was standing. "Girl," he said, breathing hard, "you do not know what you are." Rose kept the rifle pointed at him. "Yes," she said, "I know." Wade rose from the mud behind Crow. His revolver was in his left hand, hands away from the horse. Crow looked from Rose to Wade, then to his men. One was down by the woodpile. One lay groaning by the porch. One was trapped in the back window, still cursing weakly. The others had scattered into the trees when the fire and gunshots turned against them. Crow's mouth tightened. "You cannot prove anything." Rose lowered the rifle an inch. Wade did not lower his gun. "Maybe not to your friends." A new voice came from the trail. "But I ain't his friend." Lantern lights swung between the pines. Sheriff Harlan rode into the yard with Bram behind him and two more townsmen holding rifles. Rain dripped from the sheriff's hat brim. His horse blew hard from the climb. Harlan took in the broken cabin, the smoke, the blood, the trapped man, Crow in the mud. His eyes settled on Wade. "Mercer." Wade kept the gun on Crow. "Sheriff." Harlan looked at Rose. She stood in Sarah's old boots, bandaged feet planted wide, empty rifle in her arms, hair loose around her smoke-marked face. The sheriff's voice changed. "You Rose Lynn." Rose nodded. Crow stood slowly, brushing mud from his coat as if dignity could be cleaned back onto him. "Sheriff, this is a private matter. I hold lawful papers concerning that girl's placement." Harlan looked at the ruined door. "Papers shoot up cabins now." Crow's jaw tightened. "She was stolen from my custody." Wade took one step forward. Rose reached out and touched his sleeve again. He stopped. Not because Crow deserved mercy, because Rose had something to say. She handed the rifle to Wade and stepped into the rain. Her legs shook from pain, but she did not sit. "My stepmother took money," she said. The yard went quiet except for rain. She said, "Work." Then man look at me like horse. Not ask me, not tell me. She leave me on trail when I run from wagon. No shoes, no water. Crow laughed softly, a frightened child's confusion. Rose looked at him. "No." One word, flat as a door closing. Bram came forward then, holding a folded paper under his coat. "Sheriff," he said, "Crow paid me to print a notice. Said the girl stole from him. I still got the draft. No mention of lawful custody till Mercer pushed back." One of the townsmen spoke from behind the sheriff. "My wife saw May with new red shoes. Said she was bragging at the wash house that she was free of another mouth." Crow's eyes narrowed. "Gossip." Harlan dismounted. "Maybe. But I got 3 shot men, a burned cabin, and a girl with feet cut to pieces. That ain't gossip." He stepped toward Crow. "Silas Crow, I'm taking you in for attempted murder, unlawful restraint pending inquiry, and whatever else the judge can hang on your black coat." Crow's face went still again, but not calm now. Cold hate looked through. "This town will regret embarrassing me." Harlan took his pistol. "Towns regretted you long enough." He cuffed Crow with rope, then ordered the others gathered. Rose stood until Crow was pulled toward the horses. As he passed, he looked at her one last time. There was no smile left. Rose did not look away. Wade came to stand beside her, swaying a little from blood loss. Only after Crow was tied to the saddle did Rose's knees give. Wade caught her. This time she did not fight. By morning, the rain had washed the blood from the yard, but not the scars from the cabin. The porch rail was broken. One shutter hung by a single hinge. The bed quilt was burned through the middle. Smoke had blackened the wall near the hearth. The floor held dark marks where Wade's blood had fallen. Sheriff Harlan returned after sunrise with a wagon. Crow and the surviving men were already locked in Ash Hollow. May had been found trying to leave town before dawn with red shoes packed in a flour sack and Crow's money sewn into her hem. Harlan did not say what would happen to her in detail. He only told Rose she would not be coming up the mountain. Rose listened from the chair near the stove. Her feet had been rewrapped. Wade's arm was bound tight against his side. His face was pale and he looked angry about needing to sit down. Harlan removed his hat. "Miss Lynn, Judge will need your statement proper when he comes through." Rose's hand moved to the cloth horse in her lap. "I say." Harlan nodded. "You got a place to stay till then." Wade answered before Rose could look at him. "Here." The sheriff glanced around the damaged cabin. "Place needs half a carpenter and 2 miracles." Wade looked at the broken porch. "I got 1 good arm." Rose lifted her chin. "I got 2. Harlan almost smiled. "Then that's nearly a crew." Before he left, the sheriff spoke low to Wade outside. Rose could not hear every word, but she saw Wade's face. Harlan was telling him the law might be slow, but it was moving. Crow's papers were being checked. Men in town were finally willing to speak. Bram had opened his mouth. Mrs. Alvarez had opened hers wider. Others would follow now that Crow was behind bars. Fear, once cracked, made noise. When Harlan rode away, the mountain felt different, not safe like a locked box. Safe like morning after a storm when every tree still dripped but the sky was clearing. The next days were not gentle. Healing never was. Wade's arm burned with fever on the second night. Rose stayed awake, changing cloths on his forehead, moving with the crutch under her arm and Sarah's boots loose on her feet. He complained that she wrapped bandages too tight. She told him, "You bleed too loose." He had no answer for that. By the 4th day, he could stand without the wall. By the 6th, Rose could cross the room with only one hand on the table. By the 10th, Wade carried the broken porch boards away while Rose sat outside and pulled bent nails from the good pieces. The cabin changed one repair at a time. A new shutter went up first, then the porch rail, then a patch over the bullet hole by the stove. Wade scrubbed the smoke stain from the wall, but a faint dark mark stayed no matter how hard he worked. Rose saw him glare at it. "Leave," she said. "It's ugly. It says fire did not win." Wade lowered the rag. After that, he left it. Ash Hollow changed too, slower and meaner, but change came. Rose rode down 2 weeks later in Harlan's wagon, with Wade beside her despite the sheriff saying his arm was not ready for jostling. She gave her statement in the back room of the jail because the judge had no courthouse fit to use. She spoke in careful English. No crying, no begging. She told of May, the money, the wagon, the burned bedding, the man with the silver watch, the bare trail, the words that had followed her like chains. "He paid for you." When she finished, the judge was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "Do you understand, Miss Lynn, that no paper signed without your consent can make you property?" Rose looked at Wade. He gave no nod, no help. He let the answer be hers. Rose turned back. "I understand now." Crow stood in the corner between 2 deputies, one eye bruised, wrists bound. He tried to speak of business loss and contracts and disorder. The judge cut him short. Men who burn cabins over contracts usually find the contract was never their real concern. Crow's face darkened. Harlan took him away. May would face charges too. When Rose saw her through the jail window, the woman looked smaller than she remembered, sharp still but small. Her red shoes sat in the mud under the bench, ruined by rain. May saw Rose and looked away first. Rose did not feel victory. She felt the strange quiet that comes when a hand finally lets go of your throat. Outside the jail, Mrs. Alvarez pressed a paper-wrapped bundle into Rose's hands. "Sweet bread," she said. "Don't argue. I win arguments." Rose looked to Wade. Wade said she does. Bram gave Wade a sack of nails without charge and pretended it was because the sack had split. The town still stared. Some with shame, some with pity, some with the old hard look that had hurt Rose all her life, but none of them reached for her. None called her stolen. None called her sold. On the ride back, Rose kept the sweet bread in her lap and the cloth horse tucked beside it. The mountain road climbed into evening. After a long silence, Wade said, "You spoke strong." Rose watched the pine shadows slide over the wagon seat. "My voice shook." "Strong things shake." She looked at him. He did not seem to know he had said anything kind. That made it easier to believe. Autumn came thin and gold across the ridge. Rose's feet healed, though scars stayed along her soles like pale threads. Wade made her proper boots from leather bought in town, and soles cut down from an old pair of his. They were not pretty, they fit. She walked the yard the day he gave them to her, first to the trough, then to the barn, then to the trail gate. Wade watched from the porch, pretending to fix a hinge that needed no fixing. Rose turned at the gate. "I can leave," she said. Wade's hand stopped on the hinge. The words were not a threat. They were a test of the air. "Yes," he said, "any day." "Yes." She looked down the trail where heat had once tried to kill her and men had once hunted her. Then she walked back to the porch. "Not today." Wade looked at the hinge again. "No." Not today became another day, then another. Winter touched the high peaks with white. Rose learned the names of Wade's horses, then the mean chicken that pecked everyone but her, then how to mend harness, then how to split kindling without wasting strength. Wade learned that Rose hummed when she cooked but stopped if she knew he was listening. He learned she liked the first sip of tea too hot. He learned she counted every coin twice, not from greed but from old hunger. The cabin grew another cup, another plate, a second chair that did not wobble, a curtain Rose sewed from flour sacks. Dried flowers hung above the window because Mrs. Alvarez said every house needed something useless and pretty. Wade said flowers were just weeds with better manners. Rose hung them anyway. At night, Wade still woke sometimes and reached toward old grief before remembering where he was. The tintype remained in the leather case, closed. Rose never touched it again, but sometimes she saw Wade take it down, hold it, then put it back. One evening, snow began before sunset, soft at first, then thick enough to cover the old blood marks in the yard and turn the burned porch scar silver. Rose came in with wood stacked in her arms. Wade took half from her without asking. "I carry," she said. "I know." He took it anyway. The stove glowed, beans simmered. The room smelled of smoke, snow, and bread. Rose set the last log in the bin and looked toward the shelf. The carved wooden horse stood there alone. Her cloth horse had been mended twice now. One leg was still black from the fire. She had not tried to hide the burn. Wade followed her gaze. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he crossed to the shelf and took down the leather case. Rose went still. Wade opened it. Sarah and Eli looked out from the old tin, caught forever in a day before fever, before falling beams, before silence moved in. Wade stared at them. His thumb brushed the edge. Rose stood by the table, cloth horse in hand. "You can keep closed," she said. "I know." His voice was rough. He set the tintype on the mantel, not behind the coffee tin, not face down, there where firelight could touch it. The room seemed to hold its breath. Rose walked over slowly. She looked at Sarah's steady eyes, Eli's almost laugh, Wade's younger hand resting near them. Then she placed the cloth horse beside the tintype. The crooked little thing leaned against the frame like it had finally reached a fence after a long run. Wade looked at it. Rose drew her hand back. For them, she asked. Wade swallowed. For all of us. The words were few. They were enough. Snow thickened beyond the window. The mountain vanished into white, leaving only the cabin, the fire, and two people standing near the mantel, with the dead no longer hidden and the living no longer pretending not to need each other. Rose touched the edge of the mantel. My father say horse knows way home. Wade looked at the cloth horse, then at her. Looks like he was right. She smiled then, not the small ghost of one from before. A real smile, tired and bright. Wade reached for her hand. He did not rush it. He did not take what was not offered. His fingers stopped close enough for her to refuse. Rose looked at his hand. Then she placed hers in it. His palm was rough and warm. Hers was scarred and steady. No promise was spoken. The cabin had heard enough words from men who used them poorly. Instead, Wade held her hand in front of the fire while snow covered the broken places outside. The new shutter held. The repaired porch stood firm. 2 cups waited on the table. 2 horses watched from the mantel, one carved from pine and one stitched from cloth, keeping guard beside the faces of Sarah and Eli. What had once been a hiding place had become a house. And by spring, when the ridge thawed and grass pushed green through the yard, folks in Ash Hollow no longer called it Mercer's lonely cabin. They called it the home up the mountain. Rose called it that too, but Wade only smiled when she said it, as if he had known all along that some lost things do not return the way they left. Sometimes they come barefoot through fire. Sometimes they carry a little cloth horse. Sometimes they knock the deadbolt off a man's heart and teach him to open the door again.